Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whichever applies to you according to whatever time it is that you see this video. And I would like to take this moment right now to say thank you so much for tuning in to me today. I really do appreciate it. And I graciously welcome each and every one of you to another episode of TJ's Topics. I tell you, I'm so glad to be with you. I consider it a joy, an honor, and a privilege to be able to come into your presence on any given occasion. And I tell you, and I would not only like to welcome you to TJ's Topics, but I also would like to welcome you to the month of October. Can you believe that? We have arrived into the 10th month of the year, October. I tell you, and we are now in the last quarter of 2025. 4 quarters in a year and 3 months per quarter. So now we're in the fourth quarter, like in football and basketball, the final quarter, and we intend to win the game. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and get into today's topic, which is whatever you do, keep the church out of your business. And I'm telling you, that's not just a catchphrase. That is the truth. Whatever you do, keep the church out of your business by any means necessary. By all means, please don't involve your church family, your church members, your pastor, whoever, into your personal life, because they can and they will be detrimental to your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And I know from personal experience how traumatizing it is to have such a negative impact from church folk as a result of their gossiping and lying and scheming and conniving and oh, you name it. I've been there. I have lived it. And a number of you probably have too. So, and that's the reason why now I just don't care to get too involved with church folk, because I already know that most of them are absolutely no good whatsoever. Why it's good to keep church folk out of your business. Keeping certain details of your life private from members of your church community is a healthy practice that protects you from gossip, judgment, and emotional and financial exploitation. Because believe me, they can attack you in any or all of those areas. While many church relationships are supportive and uplifting, setting boundaries helps you maintain personal well-being and prevent potential harm. I tell you, a lot of times people like to consider Christians as some of the best people in the world in terms of being friends with and building a community with, and they see the church as a safe haven. But I'm here to tell you, the church, the church is not necessarily a safe haven. Believe me. I mean, sometimes the church can be the most dangerous place there is. More dangerous than going into projects. So more dangerous than going into a trap house or some old juke joint down in the hood or anything like that. The church can be something else. And you can't talk to other church folk about this because, you know, their mind is already made up. For the most part, they have been programmed to believe one way and one way only, and they don't care to look at things from a different perspective. They only have one perspective, and that is what the Bible says, what pastor says, what Big Mama and all them said while they was growing up. And basically, the Christian faith is passed down from generation to generation. All the things that we learned about religion, and particularly that of Christianity, came from those whom we looked up to and loved throughout our childhood. You know, our family, parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and what have you. You know, so it's just basically hand me down material that we receive, you know, when it comes to religion. But as we get ready to close out the year 2025, I think that it's important that we learn to start using our own mind, use our own brain and think, and not just rely solely upon the teachings that we got throughout our childhood and our teens, but start researching these things, questioning what we've been taught, all the while keeping church folk at bay, because they'll get into your head, and I promise you, they will do some serious damage. Now, there are certain church practices that allow these folk in the church to get all in your business. And many of you have done these things, and I've done them myself. Number one, prayer request. Sharing personal or family struggles with a small group or a prayer circle. You know, and all that's doing is, you know, when they start talking about, do we have any prayer requests? Anybody need prayer about a situation, what you're going through, whatever. That opens the door for these people to start running their mouth. Because as soon as you start to spill the beans on whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life, whether it's your health or, you know, situation on your job or in your marriage, your children, they running running out in the street and stuff on drugs and alcohol and this and that, you know, or heaven forbid, you have a son who is you know, that the parents may feel is gay, or or the daughter is a lesbian. And they wanna plead the blood of Jesus over them to cast out a demonic demon, whatever, you know, all that old kind of stuff over their children. That's opening the door for gossip, and it spreads rapidly like wildfire. Number two, testimony service. Now, this is something that I have never been able to. I just, out of all the years I've been in church, I have never cared for testimony service. This is when they ask church members to come before the congregation and testify about the goodness of God in their lives, all the while sharing some of the most personal and perhaps even intimate details of their life, you know, regarding whatever circumstances that they're dealing with. Testimony service. I tell you, I simply cannot stand it. And I don't see how in the world people get up there and put all their business in the street like that about pretty much anything. But some folks love to get up in front of the congregation and testify. Some of them do it almost every Sunday. And you got people in the church that love to hear certain people get up and talk all the time, because all that's doing is feeding into into the mess that they're going and searching for, you know. Shoot, it's ridiculous. Number three. Now, this is a huge mistake that I have made, and I'm sure that a number of you have made as well along the way. Viewing your church members as friends. And my mama told me back when I was like 18, 19 years old, that the people in the church, at the church that I was in at the time, them folk ain't none of your friends. Well, it took me 7 years to learn that truth. I was 18 when she told me that. I didn't learn it until I was 25. By the time I was getting ready to walk away from the church, which was my parents' church, by the way. It took me 7 years, 7 being the number of completion, before I finally grabbed a hold to what my mama was saying. And I found out for myself that the people in the church are most certainly not your friends, because it's usually those very people who claim to love the loud, and or they run around and they jump and shout and holler and turn over the pews and stuff, who wreak havoc all in your life as a result of running their mouth, spreading gossip about you, and they don't even know you that well, but they have peeped into your life some kind of way. Perhaps you shared something with them, or they may have overheard a conversation between you and somebody else in the church, and that gave them something to, kind of feed on. And they started spreading rumors. And see, I've been through that, and I can tell you that it is a miserable feeling when you've been lied on by people who claim to love the Lord, claim to I'm talking about they do all the jumping and all the Bible quoting and all that kind of stuff. That ain't nothing but a front. That's all it is. Church members are just that. Church members. They are not your friends. And quite frankly, they don't need to be. To be frank with you, to be honest with you, church members are not worthy of being your friends. And I'm going to tell you why. Because to be friends with someone is to be equal with them. In other words, it puts you and them on the same playing field. You're on the same page together. And oftentimes, that's not the case when it comes to dealing with church folk. Because the truth is, oftentimes, there is a bit of a power struggle within the church. And that certain members, and sometimes even those in authority, such as the pastor, associate ministers, deacons, and other leaders, assume that they have spiritual authority over those whom they deem to be less than within the flock. The leaders in the church, the ones who are like out front all the time, at times they may look down on those in the congregation who may not be as, outspoken, or, they're not as visible within the church like they are. And therefore, they treat them as if they really don't matter. They want your money now. As long as you're paying your money, that's fine. But they don't want to hear anything you have to say, because they feel like your words are invalid. Your thoughts, they don't count, but they want you to believe and go along with everything they say and teach and preach. By setting boundaries, you can prevent all sorts of spiritual bombardment and judgment from those type of individuals. And that's what I would like to encourage you today. If you do attend church on a regular basis, don't think for 1 second that those people are your friends, because I'm here to tell you, they most certainly are not. They will stab you in your back before you can bat your eye. They will come down on you and they'll judge you and do anything else to bring shame to your name. I don't care who it is. They're not your friends. And it took me a long time to learn that. But when I learned it, I never forgot it. And I never will. So on that note, I would like to say thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of TJ's Topics. as we walk into the month of October. So glad to be with you once again. And I hope that you'll join me again next time. And who knows, we may be still talking about some of the ignorant things that we see going on in the church. Ain't no telling what we're going to talk about, but stay tuned. This is Taryn Jerome Harris, reminding all of you out there that every round goes higher and higher. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.